Hey, welcome to Fix It for Josh's sake. Today I'm going to be working on this 1981 Yamaha XJ650. That's a Maxim. Didn't want to be working on it, but I rebuilt the carbs. Everything went real nice on that. It was a lot of work. They were pretty grimy. The only thing I didn't do was measure the float height. And when I put them in here, it started fine. Runs great, goes down the road and everything. I left the gas on overnight. And in the next morning, I had gas draining out of the carb boots. Let's see if I can show you, like right here. Gas was coming out here and into the air box. So that tells me my float height is not accurate or correct. So I'm going to take you along as I adjust all those heights and fix it for Josh's sake. Here's the carbs I'm working on right here. Already got the float bowls, needle, and the floats themselves out of each one. I mean, like I said, it all came apart real easy because I just went through these carbs. These were really gunked up to the point where we couldn't even get any gas to flow through them. There was a lot wrong with these carbs. Got them all cleaned up. Man, it runs nice. But a couple of things I'm going to need here. I got my caliper here. Got a nice little line here because I'm going to be flowing fuel in a little bit after I get done measuring the float height. Just to verify that everything's correct, we're going to be thinking about a couple of numbers here. First number is the float height is 17.5 millimeters off of the base of the, or this is actually like the top of the, where the float recesses in. So the bottom of the carburetor, but that would be the top of the float bowl, 17.5 millimeters. And then the other number we're keeping in our mind is that the fuel level should be 3 millimeters below the top of the carburetor. So that's something we check later. But we also have these gaskets in here, and when I measure them with my caliper here, they're about 1.5 millimeter. So if we're saying 17.5, then we've got to go down to like 16 millimeters if there's carburetors. If your carburetors have these gaskets jammed in, which mine are staying. I'm not going to remove them because then I gotta, order a whole new kit and all that kind of stuff. And they were sealed. I wasn't leaking or anything. I mean, this one's here, which is on the back side of the bowl right there. But none of this was leaking out, so we're going to just keep moving forward with this. In order for a float height adjustment to be worth its weight, we got to be sure that the needle has this little spring working here in this tab. If that is gunked up and stiff, which it very often is in most carb rebuilds, you got to soak that in some kerosene or hit it with some penetrating oil, blow some air in there. But when you push on this little tab, it should spring in and out real gently. And that's the amount of force it takes for the tip of this needle to properly seal off the fuel in that seat right there. Then once the seat and the needle are in there, you put the float in, the pin goes through. All this has to move really easily. This needs to flow with zero resistance, okay? And it's got to be able to bounce on that needle. And if that needle's any good, that little bitty prong in there, which, yeah, there we can see it, right down in there, it does hold this float up on its own, because the float is that light. But what we're measuring now is the distance from the highest point of this float to the top of the gasket right there, which is going to be 16 millimeters. Technique is really important in this. As I am setting the float level on this one here and getting this measured off of the gasket correctly, I want to kind of point something out here. If you notice, you look really close here, let's see if I can get back far enough, you can see this thing is twisted and one float is actually higher than the other. And it looks to me like somebody was trying to do a float adjustment here, but they were actually bending the little metal bracket here unevenly, giving two separate measurements on this float. But more than that, they also have that tab bent straight down. And normally, from my experience, these are supposed to have a bit of like a swoop down and then a flat surface. And the reason why I'm being real picky about that is because when we're down in here and we're pushing on this needle, we need that little tab that I'm complaining about here. We need this little tab to have a smooth and even push down. And right now, all of these floats that I'm dealing with right here, because of how that angle is, it's actually hitting, let me grab a needle here. It's actually hitting on the shoulder of the needle. At the same time, it's compressing into this little compression tip here. So I'm going to go through all of my floats and get those little tangs or those little tabs set up to be flat. And then I'm going to also readjust the angles on these so that this bracket isn't out of sync with, you know, everything in the world. So that I have a nice straight down push into the top of the needle right here, just like we need it to be going down so that it functions properly. I'm real happy with how this one's sitting now. I want to get in here so you can see how the tab is now set to be level with the top of the needle right in there. And that means that the floats actually have to kick up a little bit right here. But when I take my caliper, I set it right on the, see if you can see that, when I set it right on the gasket, that's 16 millimeters right there. And that's the top. So this one's set good from a mechanical measurement standpoint. I'm going to go down the line, do that on all three of these, and then we'll move on to phase 2, and that's where we actually put gas into the, flip this over, put gas in the float bowls, and measure to make sure that we have a 3 millimeter gap between the bottom of the carburetor and, well, the bottom of the carburetor, we need a 3 millimeter gap there of gas. Let me catch you up to speed with where I'm at. I have this one nice and level, nice and flat on top of the needle. This one nice and flat on top of the needle. This one, on the other hand, is very much pitched straight down. See if we can get the angle. I don't know, maybe I'll come this way. Pitched straight down, no flat surface on that tab right there. So what happens is if you just bend it with a pliers or with a flathead screwdriver, you actually pinch the spot that this axle or this pin needs to go into. So as you're bending your tab, make sure you have the pin in there so that you can tell if it's over pinching in the center right there. Otherwise, if you have it too tight in there, you can't get the pin in, and there your float's all screwed up anyway because you're readjusting it. Anyway, yeah, that's my little trick for you. Make sure this goes in and out of that float arm real easily. There's the third one done. I'm going to talk about technique with you a little bit. What I've been doing to get that to be pretty level like it needs to in order to sit evenly on the top of the needle is I've been taking a flat screwdriver and sticking it in from the side. Oh, can I do this on camera? Like that. And then coming in here with my needle nose and pinching it onto the edge of that screwdriver right there, almost like turning that, you know, edge of that screwdriver into a brake so that it will bend a bit of a shoulder into that design. Oh, I want you to be able to see that a little better. There. You can kind of see how it creates a shoulder and a nice smooth surface. And then I will adjust my floats up in here. And I can tell, you probably can't see it on camera, but this is not a 90-degree angle. This is actually folded back a little bit. So as you open this up in this area right here, then you still have a good surface tension on the top of the needle there. Okay, I'm a lot happier with these. You can see the tabs are flat in there. Each one of the tabs have an angle bent into it so that it sits flat across the top of each one of those needles that are right down in there. Let's see, right down in there, right down in there, and right down in there. And then, I don't know if I said this before, so forgive me if I'm redundant. I just want to make sure I get the details focused. We're measuring off of the gasket like that, and we're measuring both sides. Okay, that's real important because these are soft enough to flex up and down, so we need them both to have the same level. And I realize now the reason why these were all bent out of whack is it's difficult to see now because I scrubbed on them really hard with a stainless steel brush, but they were very crusty. When I took this carburetor apart, everything was very crusty in there, so I just went to town scrubbing these off really good and getting all the gunk off of them. Well, I bent the heck out of them. So now they're all back into spec where they need to be. Again, this one to the top of the float is 16 millimeters. This one is 17.5 because I don't have a gasket to measure off of here. If there was not a gasket, all these would be 17.5. So that's this part of it. Now I'm going to move on to filling these up with fuel and making sure that from the top of the float bowl to the top of the fuel level, sorry, it's the bottom of the carburetor to the top of the fuel level is 3 millimeters. Let's go do that now. So the reason why I just said 3 millimeters, and that's what we got this caliper set to right here, is because now that the float bowls are on and these screws are all set nice and tight, all the drain out lines right there, I have them all connected, and I have each one of them zip tied up to the frame here. So all 4 of these drain out ports are zip tied up to the frame, and then each one of these float bowls has the drain out screw set in the right direction. As in, when we're looking at these 4 carburetors, this one is pointing this way, this one is pointing this way, this one is pointing this way, and this one is pointing this way. That way we can get at these 2 from the outside, we can get at these 2 from the outside. And that matters more when we park it back inside of the motorcycle here. You want to be able to have access up in here if we ever need to drain out these float bowls, say come winter or something like that. But when I was talking about 3 millimeters on my caliper, I'm going to open up these little drain out screws, and the gas is going to come into here because the other line I have right here is going up here to this little old lawnmower gas tank I have. And so I'll drain the gas down into this line. It'll come down. It's going to fill up all 4 of the float bowls, and we're going to see the fuel level. And hopefully it sits right at the spot we want, which is essentially about from the shoulder right here. It's about halfway. We want it to kind of sit right at halfway at the point of this shoulder. Not to the top, because if it comes to the top, then it starts to create convection and suck up in, and the next thing you know, we've got gas coming out of all of our rubber boots, and that's a lot of problems. So my next step here is I'm going to turn the gas on right up there, and we're going to let it drain down into here. We're going to see where the measurement is. Well, I turned on the gas, ran it down into here, and before I could even crack any of these drain out screws, this carburetor started dumping gas. None of the other ones are doing it, but this one's dumping gas. So there's definitely something wrong inside of here. That float is not either seating, or I have my adjustment way off. I'm gonna have to dig into that before I can even decide if we're at the right fuel level on these others. So one more thing I want to point out, I changed where I'm measuring from. I'm actually measuring in the center of the float rather than up here on the tip, and the reason is because I was finding that when I was measuring here, I was getting very inconsistent reads. So I'm coming to the center of the float. I'm assuming, in my mind, the logic is that's more of the body of the float, not just the tip. I know some people have said you'd measure out here, but I'm going to try measuring right here at the middle, you know, at I moved it, but it was at 16.5 about when I had it there at the middle. And so I'm going to bolt all these back on and try it again. Well, I got the covers back off. Here's the carbs. This one was overflowing again. And when I say overflowing, what it does is it, let's get a camera shot. The gas comes out of these holes here. And so you know, some people know more than me, but that's where they start to goosh, and then it does trickle out a little bit on the bottom. I guess the bottom is here because it's upside down right now, but it really does start to come out those holes first. But on all of these, the level on the hose was definitely high. So while these 3 did not leak or overflow into here, like this one did, I'm gonna still raise these floats a little bit. When I say raise, I mean lower. I know it's all complicated when things are upside down, but I need this float height measurement to be stronger. So this is at about 16.5 millimeters. I'm going to move it up to 17, This one's at 17.6, this one here. So because there's not a gasket material there, I was thinking like 17.5 was my target. I'm gonna move this one to 18, and that'll do 17 and 17. And I think we'll be hopefully a little bit happier with the fuel level. I've got all of these set now to the new level that I think is going to be good. This is the last one here. Now, like I said, I was going to raise them all about 0.5 millimeter. What I did want to kind of focus on here is at the tip of the float. You know, that is the most precise place to measure from. But if I went anywhere near 17.5 millimeters at the tip, I mean water. I'm using gasoline. Gasoline was just dumping out of these. So where I'm at right now is about 20 millimeters from the very front tip of the float, which is the highest point, you know, when we measure off of the inner gasket point there. So I don't know if your carb is going to be different than mine, but that's where I'm at right now. We're going to check it again. This video is getting so much longer than I intended. Here are the carburetors. There's the float bowls. I have been all over the place, up and down and up and down and up and down on here, setting the float bowl levels over and over and over. And it seems like one always leaks. So right now, I did something different. Rather than measuring them with a caliper, I don't even know if you can look down the line and see this. I set my float bowls right at the edge of that idle jet, and each one of them is like just at the edge all the way down the line, because I have been chasing the measurements with my caliper here. Now I'm gonna say this, all of them are at 23 plus or minus 0.5. So I got like some at like 22.5. This one's like at 23.2. But I would say 23 plus or minus 0.5 is where I'm at right now on all these. And I did not expect to be that high, considering other people on chats and things like that and different research I've done online was saying that I wanted to be at 17.5 on these. So my floats are a lot farther up than I expected. And that's why I just shifted to going, well, what is the function of this carburetor? That's the idle jet. That's the highest port in the system. So I am literally sitting right at it. And when fuel gets to here, this will start to rise, and the needle will shut off the fuel. At least that's my theory. There's my perfect little video of it. You can see the concept. I don't know. I'm chasing my tail here, and so I'm actually coming at it from a totally different angle. Let's put some gas in this and some lines on the drain out ports and see what happens. When you're not getting the results you want on something like this, you start going back to all the basic details. And so these are the needles that were in here when I cleaned the carbs and had it running nice in the bike over here not too long ago. And it kept overflowing into the crankcase if I left the gas on. So I started doing some research, and I realized this is a stock XJ650 needle contrasted by the needle that was in there, and you can see how it's considerably shorter, but that's not even the, well, if I can even stack it up side by side, but that's not even the most concerning part. The real concerning part is that this shorter needle has a lot softer spring in the top here. Let me show you. Remember I was talking about making sure they're cleaned? This one, man, it just flexes in and out really, 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 really easily, to the point where I'm not sure it's making a seal on the seat right there. And then this one, this stock XJ650, this one's very rigid. That one pushes back out very easily. So I'm going to be running XJ650 needles. So I'm going, like I said, going back to the basics. The reason why I know this is an R5 350 needle is because I have an R5 kit right here, brand new, and when I compare these to the kit inside of here, that's what they are. So Okay, first thing, we got that needle, got the right needles going. Secondly, because I can never prove that my gas is turning off no matter what level I'm setting my floats at, I'm going to drop all of my floats into a little gasoline here. You know, it's going to just be like this. Okay, that's good. That one's floating. We're going to let it sit there for a minute and make sure it stays floating, that it doesn't take on water. And so I'm going to have to take all of these apart, make sure all the floats float. Third thing I'm going to do is when you look down into this seat, it's kind of dirty in there. And I noticed that on some of these, I think it was this one for sure, it was actually sticking sometimes, and the needle would like kind of not want to go all the way in. So I am going to do a deep clean on these. When I say deep clean, I actually have some brass cleaner here, metal polish, and I'm going to take some Q-tips. I'm going to remove each one of these seats, and I am going to take that polish, put it on a Q-tip, and I'm going to go ahead and polish a snot on the inside of these. I want to get myself a mirror finish so that I am confident that this seat isn't hooking up and jamming inside of there. I need that to move in and out smoothly and always give me proper seal. The fourth thing I'm going to do is I just put a fuel filter on here, and I am wondering if for some reason there is gas coming out with a little bit of dirt and debris in it, and possibly giving me a bad read on where my fuel level is. So I want to catch anything that could possibly be coming out of my gas can. My gas can isn't that old or gnarly, but I am checking everything I can think of to make sure that I get a consistent float bowl level in these 4 carburetors before I put it back in the motorcycle over there. The good news on the floats is they've been sitting there like that for a couple minutes, and they're not sinking or changing level or anything, so I know that these are buoyant floats. That's a good sign. First thing on the list checked off as a positive. For this next part to shine this seat, got myself my 10mm. I know these like to get away on us, but I happen to keep mine handy in the case all the time. So we're going to go ahead and pop that off and get that out of there so we can take it over here to the Q-tip and drill and polish and shine that up really good. I got some carb cleaner over here too that I'll spray through there. You know, wipe it off with a rag. I want to get it all nice and clean before I put it back in here. Okay, remember I was talking about I was worried there possibly was some debris in my fuel, and that's why I'm putting a fuel filter in here. Look at this garbage. Okay, I just cleaned this carb, and that's the junk. That's not supposed to be junk in there like that. That's supposed to be clean. So I'm going to have to now take these all apart and blow these all out again, because apparently the gas tank on that bike right there has a little bit of garbage in it. Oh man. It's nice when you find the smoking gun. Like, okay, look at that garbage in there. Look at that garbage in there. I mean, that's literal debris. Same in that one, same in that one. Well, no wonder why I couldn't get a good seal on any of these seats down inside of here, because there's literally that much crap coming through in the fuel and reducing the seal. So, like I said, I'm going to pop all these jets off. I'm going to blow air through everything, clean it really good. I'm going to make sure I'm running a filter in the line as we come into this carburetor bank, and I am guessing, well, I'm also going to shine them up because I already got everything set up here, but I'm guessing we just solved the problem here. We just got to follow through with it. Well, that sure looks a lot better. Took a bunch of Q-tips, the drill, the polishing compound that I've got here, and just went to town. This is what one looks like before I polished it. This is what it looks like after I've used the brass polishing compound. You can see how nice and shiny it is in there. That looks pretty good. So I am very confident now that my needle will not be hanging up in the seat like it possibly, I know it was catching before. So that's going to look really nice, and see, falls out really good. That's a lot better. So I'll go down the line, do that on the rest of these, and then I'll go back, blow this all out, reset my float levels, and go back to the fuel test lines that we put on here to see where the float bowls are at, and we should be good from there. Like I said I was going to do, I took out all the jets out of all 4 banks, and all the seats are all nice and shiny. You can see inside of each one how pretty they are. So everything's going to get screwed back together, and at that point I will put my floats back in, and I have no idea where I'm going to start at. I'm just hoping that the fuel will shut off and we'll at least get a level. All the bits and bobs are back in. Everything is set. I have all the floats set right around 20 at the highest point right here on the tip. So I'm going to put my covers back on, screw it down tight, run some gas in there, and see where I'm at. Everything's back together. All the hoses are on for the drain out. Details. There we go. You can see it right there. That fuel filter has a flow arrow pointing this way. If you do have to put a fuel filter on your bike, make sure you got the flow arrow going in the right direction. Well, here's the moment of truth. Hoses are on, the drain out screws are open, lines connected with a fuel filter, and here's my little temporary tank that I will be flipping on. You can see the gas going down, going through the filter, going in. Okay, this one's coming up, this one's coming up, this one's right there. This one always comes in slow, don't know why. This level's staying below the top of the, and that one's gooshing. Well, it was almost a fix. Sometimes needle and seat's gotta find their home, right? Well, now that one's sitting there, that level's good, that level's good, and believe it or not, I hooked my gas, shook the bank of carbs, and that needle and seat set in as well, and now it's sitting there, and I'm not getting any overflow on any of these. My levels are now set right. Maybe the moral is, if you do have gas cushion, click on it, tick on it, whack on it with a screwdriver, or shake the bank or something like that. But my gas is flowing, and it's on up there on the on-off valve, but I don't have anything overflowing anymore. I think we can call this a fix. I am so happy to have the float levels set. I'm gonna spray a little bit of this silicone lubricant into each one of these boots just to help them be a little bit more slippery as I slide that bank of carbs up in here and tighten each one of these hose clamps. I like to spray the same silicone lubricant on the back boots as well, but just pay attention to all of your hose clamps. See this Phillips screw right there? We need 2 to face out to this way. The other 2 on the other side need to face to the other side because we can't reach through the middle to get into that 3rd or 4th one from this side. So pay attention to those so we can get at them easily. And then with a little bit of persistence, we can get each one of those boots pushed into the air cleaner box right there. And these are all set and ready to go. So now I'm going to slide my bank in from the shifter side, from the clutch right here, the clutch side. I'm going to push my bank in across and get those pushed into place. Once the carbs are in and the hose clamps are tight there, and the hose clamps are tight there, we only got one more detail here, and that's both of the cables. This is the throttle cable and the choke cable. Throttle cable, a little bit bigger one, goes right there, sits in that pocket, but before you put it in that pocket, you're going to stick it in that slot right there, and then pull it up and stick it into that pocket. And the choke, the little bit smaller one here, that sits into this pocket right here, and then pulls forward and clamps in like that. So you get it in, then you clamp it. And then we got to turn around and put the gas line in from the gas tank. Once the gas tank is on, there's just 2 gas lines to hook up. I can't say gas line accurately. This is an impulse line, so this is air that's pulsating from the crank of the motor. This is the gas line, which attaches to this fancy fuel filter I just put in. So make sure you got those 2 hooked up. Well, here's the final detail. I didn't like this gas filter coming in down here because it created a loop in the line, which then was catching air bubbles. So I put the filter right here, and then here's my shutoff valve. This is the petcock with the reserve and prime and all that. This is all rotted out in there, and this is the poor man's way to do it. You put an O-ring in there, you pinch it shut, now it doesn't leak gas, and you got your shut off here. When your kit comes in the mail from eBay, you pop these 2 screws off, you can put the new rubber little gasket and washer in there, and everything's back to good to go. But this is the quick and easy way to fix that. But now my line just goes around and comes straight down into the carburetor behind this boot, so I don't have that loop and air bubble happening that was happening a minute ago. The carbs are in, so we're going to turn the key here and see what happens. Well, there you have it. Thanks for watching Fix It for Josh's sake. If you liked what you saw in this video, go ahead and give me a subscribe, a thumbs up, pass this video along to somebody else. Tell me what you're working on. Show me your project, or tell me how you would have done this differently, because this was a bit of a shenanigan to fix. But I enjoyed it. And again, thanks for watching Fix It for Josh's sake.